Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. This is K pop. I am now recording for you from quite like a self made studio. I'm literally in one of the rooms at university with a microphone connected to my laptop. It's very difficult to be able to book the recording studio, the hub. Um, I think so many people just want to use it that, it's pretty like you need to be sign up in advance, like a week in advance or something, in order to get like a time slot that's available and also works for you. Um, it's been pretty difficult to get there. And once I got there, something went wrong. So it's been pretty difficult. I I know that there will be some difference in the sound, like in the quality, and just in general, you probably will hear the difference, but I don't think it will affect the 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 listening experience that much. I hope. So we have to work with what we have, right? Also, I have to be honest, it's been quite some time since I recorded the first episode. I just figured out that it is pretty difficult to actually get yourself together and record because I know that I said it's like, you have so many people around you and they just say, just do it. And you have this encouragement and this support, and it's so nice. But then you also get overwhelmed with it because you're very happy that you have this support from those people, but on the other hand, you kind of want to live up to the expectations of others, and then you're just thinking about, oh my god, like, do I have enough material? Am I gonna record this good enough? And so on. So it's also, of course, like, life is busy all the time, something is happening, or you just don't have motivation to do so. I figured like it is pretty difficult to get yourself to start doing things. I think it's like with everything. It's very difficult at the beginning to just start it, but once you do it, once you have the start, it's just flowing kind of. So I have the same experience with recording. I just need like a week to get myself to actually, from the idea to actually, the execution. I have like a week of just thinking about it and like, oh, do I have enough material? Like, is it good enough? But once you start it, it's fun and it's just flowing. But the beginnings are very difficult. But here we are in the self-made studio, and today I thought that I'm gonna record an episode about. Well, it's kind of like a guide maybe for people who may not be that familiar with K-pop, with the industry, because I know that I have like there are people that are not very invested in the whole topic, but would like to listen to my podcast in order to maybe find out more, even though obviously it's not like they will start being K-pop stans or anything, but it's just also, I think, for the future episodes, it will be a nice guide because I will probably use some like words that people might not be familiar with, or just like concepts. So in this episode, I will probably just try to kind of explain how the industry works, like the most important and the most common things that may be useful to know before diving deeper into some topics from the industry. So that's what it's gonna be about today. Okay, so let's try to start from like the very basics, from the very beginning. So we have K-pop groups, right? They're usually boy groups and girl groups. Like the industry is pretty divided by gender, so there are like not a lot of groups that are mixed. I think the most popular band that can be recognized from being like mixed is Cart. They have two boys and two girls in the group, but besides that, on the top of my mind, I cannot find any other group. It's usually boys groups or girls groups. The industry is pretty divided by also like award shows, for example. There are usually categories for girl groups and categories for boy groups, for solo singers groups. So it's all divided usually. Um, and in those groups, we have idols. So it's not really common to say just a singer or just a performer, because usually the people who are in those K-pop groups, there are just like so much more than just like one thing. So it's very uncommon for someone in the group to be just a good vocalist or just a good dancer, because those people are preparing for their debut, for being in this industry, for being in a band, or just yeah, just being a performer for years. Or well, not always years. Sometimes it's just like the matter of a few months, but usually people are training for a few years before they make it to their group, or just in like to debut in the industry. And in those years of trainings, they learn how to sing, how to dance, how to perform, how to rap, but also being an idol in the K-pop industry also means you have a lot of other roles. As in, you can take up acting, you can take up modeling. Those are, I would say, two the most common ones, let's say, because yeah, as you are a K-pop idol, you have your debut in the group, a lot of other doors opens as well. So yeah, a lot of idols go and take some roles as actors, actresses, models, where, well, usually modeling is just a part of it all, because of course like photo shoots for albums and just for magazines, but some of them take it to kind of like another level and take part in fashion shows. Those are also mostly connected with their own interests. If someone from the idol group, some idol is also interested in fashion industry, they most likely just try to get into the industry as well, with modeling and going to different fashion shows. So the industry, yeah, it's like pretty diverse and pretty broad, because it's not just about singing, dancing. Yeah, it connects with a lot of different things. And that's why we call them idols. And also, of course, because um, you take, they are people who you look up to mostly. They are your inspiration, or yeah, of course, like since the K-pop industry focuses a lot, of course, on getting a lot of fans very invested in the group. So what the industry tries to invest you with, or like the entertainment companies try to get you with, is like not just casual listening to the group, but also but just being very invested with the group, like in like being interested in their daily life, or yeah, just like, of course, consuming literally whatever they produce and whatever they give you. So with the industry, within the industry, it works like this. There's a group. They have their debut. They have their, well, they either debut with an album or with this EP or a single. So they have their debut. And then with this debut, of course, it's like their introduction to the industry, that people need to get to know them. Although it's also pretty common nowadays to kind of introduce the band before they have their debuts, so people are also very like curious about what are they gonna be, what kind of music will they make. So now kind of the industry, the entertainment companies try to get the people's attention sometime before the group actually make their debut, so people are already familiar with the members and yeah, are just looking forward. So they already have some kind of target group. They kind of already have some group of people that will be there from the very beginning of when the band actually makes it to performances and just, in the industry. And also the entertainment companies, I didn't really mention that. So entertainment companies are just the companies that basically get those idols, those people, to make the band or just to make them the artists. So the system basically works like this. There are auditions for people in the entertainment companies. So they cast people from literally from the street to try their luck, basically. There are just auditions that are carried out, and they just look for young talents, basically. Sometimes people just audition themselves, so they actually send how do you call it? Like not a request, but like they send their will to audition. And sometimes those are, well, I'm not sure if that's very common now. I think it's mostly in the past, but there are like those people from the companies that would literally just go on the street and look for people and like ask them, hey, like, are you interested in trying to be an idol? So literally just they could just there are like a lot of funny stories. Well, funny. Sometimes they're like, when you actually think about it, it's kind of creepy. But for example, someone being literally chased by someone from the entertainment company, be like, hey, do you want to be an idol? Or and like those people be like, why are you following me? So from the top of my head right now, this situation was basically how Sehun from EXO got casted. He was literally just, so the companies have those like scouts, those people who are just kind of looking for people to audition, to get them to audition for the company. Um, and literally one of those scouts from SM Entertainment, which is basically one of the biggest entertainment industries from K-pop, uh, just saw him on the street or like wherever he was eating something, and he started chasing him literally because Sehun was running away from the guy, from this person, and then they were chasing each other. Like the person was chasing him, um, and then eventually they started talking, and Sehun was like, "Okay, I guess I will try." Like he was not that scared anymore. But when you think about it, it's a little questionable. As I said, I'm not sure if it's still happening, if it's actually, if those industry, if those companies actually still do that. And yeah, it's also pretty common for people to audition for a specific entertainment company because they know an idol that they're looking up to, which is from the company. So they just audition because they really want to be like this person that they're looking up to. So that's basically how it works. And then they audition, and they're in this training period before they can actually make it to their debut. So as I mentioned before, it's usually a matter of a few years before the company selects them and create a band, because I don't usually, it's not that common to just debut as a solo singer. It's usually mostly that the entertainment companies create those boys bands or girl bands, and from there, when you achieve certain popularity, I would say, then and it also it really depends on the entertainment company. Then they give you a chance to actually make your solo debut and like just perform as a soloist as well. But or like after your band disbands, and then naturally some of them pick more of a actor or actress career, some just disappear, some go solo. So that's basically kind of how it works. And this training period is basically preparing them for the idol life, because I feel like it's very different from how the Western industry works when it comes to like music industry. I don't think there's anything like a training period in the Western society. right? I'm not sure, but I don't think so. Um, because yeah, like basically here at like in the West, it looks like usually people get recognized because of some kind of talent shows, or like from now mainly also social media, of course, like I don't know, I guess TikTok or like Instagram stuff like that, and they just eventually get more popular. But for the K-pop industry and for those idols, it's literally they sacrifice their whole life. Well, okay, whole life. Okay, that's a lot to say maybe, but a very big part of their life to their career, in the sense that usually you start very young for the training. So people who are like still in middle school or high school, so around I would say 14, 15, sometimes younger, and they already start this training period. They do school and this in the same time. When they sign the contract, it's basically they sign a contract as in the company take care of them, give them training, offer like the classes and all this stuff, and then they don't pay anything for that, uh, and you kind of need to pay it off after you debut. So for a certain period of time after you debut, you actually, I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think you get really, you don't really get paid, because you kind of, the money you make from the performances, from the album and stuff, from the sales, it first need to pay off the debt that you have, that you created when you were a trainee. Because when you're a trainee and you're training in there, obviously you invest time in like being in the classes, and they offer those classes and it's not for free. Also, if you live at the company, or like they have those dorms and stuff, you also don't really pay for it. They pay it for you, but then you have to pay it back from the money that you make after you have your debut. So that's how it works. And they make sure to train you before you debut, because it's a tough life, and because it's not just being a singer and like going to a studio to record music when you have the inspiration to, like the entertainment companies have so many people that work there. They're like songwriters, music producers, probably also music video editors, directors, all those trainers, choreographers, well, how do you call that? Vocal trainers, yeah, I guess. So all these different types of people, of course, that work in the company and like help with the whole process of guiding the whole band for their for their albums, for their performances. And it's just such a tough life, because they train basically, well, I don't know, like before they come back, probably like 15 hours per day, literally, like they just train the whole day, and then they just get some sleep. They come back again to train, because they need to learn choreography. It's those the performances are not just singing performances, but whenever they have a comeback, and the comeback is literally just when a group comes back with new music, with an album or a single or EP, they always have a choreography to perform the title song from the whatever they release. And usually also they have a B-side track that comes with. So the group usually has 2 performances per comeback, depending obviously on how many songs do they release, but that's I would say the usual amount, that they always have a title track that has music video, and then they have a B-side that usually just has a choreography, and they perform it. And they perform it at the music shows. They have several music shows. It's not airing every day, but they have they have more than 7 different music shows, but I'm not following it that much right now, so I don't know how it works exactly. But almost every day there is a different music show that's airing, and basically the whole show is just bands performing their recent songs from their comeback. The promotion takes up to, I think, 3 weeks. So the band has their comeback, they have the music video, the title track, and the B-side track with choreographies. And they just perform those songs for literally almost 3 weeks straight with the like for those music shows. And at the end of every music show, there's kind of like this charts of like how the songs perform and like how much sales of the album and like all this kind of stuff. There are like usually votings for specific music shows, so people need to vote for their favorite song. And at the end of every music show, there is an award for a band who, well, has the highest score. And for those scores, there are a lot of different components, as in views gained from like, well, since the music show is every week, like it's on a specific day of the week. It's usually, I think, gathered like weekly, so the views gathered for the past week, and then also, well, so there are music video views, there are album sales, number of times broadcasted on a specific channel, social media charts, digital music charts. So it's kind of like all of those different things combined in a score, and then a certain group wins at the end of the show. And then the fans kind of, well, not only fans, but like it's kind of a thing to count. So like if there's a comeback of a group and then they gain the award, it's kind of a big deal. Well, like it's always like celebrated, and so for example, it's counted like, okay, how many wins did this song get? And once the group actually gains their first win with like ever, basically, because it's not that easy. In those programs, there are so many groups. The industry is so broad, and there are so many groups that usually I think the average amount of groups performing in one music show is like 20. I think like 20 groups, or like just artists usually are in the music shows, but not all of them are kind of qualified to get to like the charts. So not all the groups can be qualified to even compete for the award at the end. So it is a pretty big deal when the group kind of get the win, because yeah, then it you can see, because so many components are create the score, and at the end basically the award. Then it's a pretty big deal, and everyone is of course happy that they got the win. And there are usually multiple wins. Like once you get the first win, then usually you get a few from the same comeback, but of course it's not a rule. It depends. Also, it depends because the industry is so broad and there are so many groups and artists and everything right now. It's every day, almost every day there is something new. Like there is a new music release from a group, and of course it's mostly like more niche. Oh, I can say also a vocabulary now, a one word that can be useful. It's a phrase, nugu group. So nugu in Korean means who. So a nugu group basically means a group that is like very niche, still not very known by a lot of people. So those groups, of course, don't have that much recognition yet, and the chances like they can win an award in the music show is like very small. So there are most of the groups, I mean, okay, like yeah, I think most of the industry basically is like those groups that are very not seen, because the market is so big. Like it's just impossible for everyone to have the equal popularity, and like there are just so many different factors that affects the group's popularity, that yeah, you just can't possibly give the same attention to like all of them. It's basically a competition, but that's just the same as in Western media and Western markets. So of course that's just how it works. So most of those new music releases, I would say, are from the smaller groups that just don't really have big chances of being of winning, for example, like awards in those music shows. And so when there's a week, for example, where the promotions from those bigger groups basically are over and those Nugu groups are more can be more seen in those music shows, they have a bigger chance of winning because the competition is just different because every week there's a different comeback, there's the different groups compete. So it's very like you can't really compare it as in, for example, when there's a one comeback and then they gain, for example, they have 5 wins with this song, amazing. And then the other time they only have one or they don't have any because, for example, this comeback at the same time there was another group that's more popular. So it doesn't really, it's not just about, oh, is this good, is this song actually that good, because it's also very objective. Of course, like everyone has a different music taste because, okay, also K-pop is like, it's such a broad term because the music that is under this term is actually so broad, like so it can be in such a different direction. So some of the songs are more like, I would say, like pop music. Some other are a little bit more rock. Some other are a little bit like techno, maybe even. There are just so many different K-pop, like there's just so many different genres of music that actually go under the term of K-pop because it's basically a K-pop. It's now a term that determines, is that how you say this word? I don't know. Um, just the whole Korean music industry. And like a culture underneath that, with that. So it's not just that it's a Korean pop music. It's literally just a term to gather all of those groups and all of this, the whole, this, all of those things that go with the industry. But it's not really just pop music. It's so different. And that's why I also think that since it's so diverse, basically, okay, not everyone, of course, but just so many people could actually find something that they like because there's just so much in there that is a collection of different genres that I really think a lot of people would actually like it if they can just find something for themselves. But it's pretty difficult because, well, there's just so many of groups and of possible genres that they could like. So I drifted from what I was saying a lot. But okay, so we have those music shows that they perform when they have their debut, they have their comebacks, and with those comebacks, there are also a lot of different variety shows that that they take part in. So the promotion period usually takes around 3 weeks, as I mentioned. And in those weeks, there are like several activities that the band take part in, like carries out. So not only the showcases, the performances in those music shows, but also taking part in the variety shows. There are like certain, like a few that are like the most popular. They have like quite popular hosts, or yeah, there's just usually like a lot of different types of those shows, and then the bands record episodes with them in order to get their music promoted, their comeback promoted. And in those shows, they just usually talk about their music, their comeback, of course, to promote it. And it's kind of combined with a lot of fun activities, depending on the show. So there's just a lot of things happening, especially when they have their comebacks, and there's just so much content. Also, a lot of groups have their own like shows, for example, on YouTube, usually on YouTube, with some episodes, and it's usually also just during the promotion time. So let's give an example. There's this band called TXT. It's a band that had their debut 3 years ago now in 2019, and it's the first boy band, a first group to debut in the same company as BTS. So when BTS basically just started in 2013, I believe, their company was actually very small, like it wasn't very known or anything, and the BTS was the first group that had like they had, and that back then it was Big Hit Entertainment. Now it's the label change, it's Hype, and it has just so many different. I don't even know. I'm not very much in the topic of Hype, so I'm not sure how it works. But they also have like their label in Japan, I think, and since BTS basically gained so much popularity and they gained so much money for the company, of course they could like now it's possible for the company to grow more and more and more. So they bought just a lot of different other things that are now like kind of connected to the company. I'm not sure how it works, but back to the topic, TXT. Um, so after the BTS had their debut in 2013, then basically 6 years passed, and then TXT was supposed to make their debut. There was like controversies because, of course, since BTS were the only group in the company, and then TXT was supposed to like follow, it was kind of like comparing them, of course, to their seniors, and kind of being also, but a lot of people also just try to like their music just because of the company of BTS. So it was like very mixed reactions and very mixed opinions. But okay, but that's the group TXT. So TXT, for example, when they have their comeback, they have this their own kind of variety show on YouTube, which is called To Do, and I think now it's like over 70 episodes, but basically they only release the episodes when there is a promotion period. Well, now actually no, because I think a new episode was literally a week ago, and now they don't have anything, like they don't have a comeback or anything. But usually it's only during promotion time. And in this variety show, basically every episode has a different theme. They have the whole, of course, production team with them, the crew, and they kind of make the script. They make the whole concept for the episodes. But it's just like usually around 30 minutes episode just of them having fun or like doing very different activities. For example, like once I guess they were like kind of like paintball. Is that really paintball? But I think like laser guns. I'm not sure how it's called, but yeah, just like those games, and they have kind of missions to carry out like during the whole game. Um, or they visit places, for example, like they also I think yeah, they also had this episode, I think, of them being in a cafe. They basically booked the whole cafe for them, and they were like just supposed to learn some barista stuff. So basically, they also, I think, usually ask the group like what would they like to do, and of course, if it's too like they dream too big, as in going abroad like on vacation somewhere, of course it's not always maybe taken into account, but usually the production team tries to take their ideas into consideration and into mind, like how can they actually make it happen. And that's just, yeah, that's one of the examples, but usually that's how it works. They have just different activities, they just do very different stuff, and it's basically just a content for fans to watch and to consume, basically, because fans feel this connection and they feel like they get to know the band more, and it's just kind of like, I also feel like it's kind of the process of maybe growing up from this, because when I was kind of joining the whole K-pop fandom, pop culture, whatever, I also felt kind of like I really need to keep up with all the content that is created. And there's just so much, as I mentioned. Like, I probably didn't even mention everything because it's just like, oh yeah, okay, music shows, some variety shows, but it's really like the schedules of those groups are very packed for like for the period of the promotion. It's very like they don't have any free time basically for like a month or two, because of no, like mostly 2 3 months I think, because before the comeback they also need to train a lot for the comeback and also record the music and all the stuff. Also record the music videos, yeah. So it's probably like I didn't even mention all of this, but it's just very, just like a lot of content created. And then if you are very invested in a certain group, you just feel like you need to keep up with all of this. And I feel like I also saw it somewhere, I think on social media, that a part of growing up is kind of just taking it easy, and you don't really like, you grow out of the feeling that you really have to keep up with everything that they produce for a certain group. um, and sometimes it just kind of goes to just casual listening. Sometimes it's just kind of casual listening, but still just kind of like, if something catches your eye, then you decide, okay, yeah, I'm gonna watch it, right? And not like literally spending your whole life and spending your whole free time just trying to catch up with all the content. But I don't judge people for doing that. I think like I also had the same when I was younger and I got into the whole thing, that I was like very much trying to watch literally every show that there is. Also for me it was catching up with some groups, because when I started getting into K-pop, the groups that I was like very invested in was usually like EXO, GOT7, those two groups were like very present in my life when I started studying, when I started being a K-pop stan. And I remember I literally found a website with like EXO variety shows with English subtitles, and I was trying. My goal was to watch all of it, literally, because when I got into K-pop, it was 4 years after EXO had their debut. So throughout those 4 years, there was a lot of content created for me to catch up. You know what I mean? So kind of I felt this need of like, oh my god, like I got into this group and I really want to get to know them. So I would just watch literally every single thing there is possible, to get to know them, to catch up. So I think it's kind of how it is created, for people to feel this need of getting to know them, getting to know those idols, and getting to just consume the whole content. And as I said, I think with time it kind of just fades, and you start to prioritize things differently, and it just changes over time. But and it's okay. And if you just kind of grow out of this phase of, trying to be very invested in their lives, and then you kind of just start being more casual stan, yeah, it's just a part of the process, I think. And there's nothing wrong with both. There's nothing wrong with spending your free time trying to catch up with something. Like, if that's what gives you joy, and if that's what gives you the positive energy, that's fine. As long as you don't hurt anyone with this and it's just like purely for yourself, it's okay. And also, I think what comes to like being interested in the K-pop industry is that it connects a lot with different types of activities that you can get interested in. For example, when I got into K-pop, I started being more interested in dancing, and I joined a dance group, and I was dancing for 4 years before COVID hit. So it also brought me a new hobby. It's not, because I also would consider being interested in K-pop and Korean culture a hobby, because it just so much things connected with it that it's basically like it takes so much time, because it's not only like when you get into K-pop, and you get so much interested in the culture, it's also, learning about the culture, learning about the language, learning the language. A lot of people start to, being interested in dancing, and they start dancing or singing. Or as me, basically what brought me the idea to get the podcast and maybe being more interested in the radio industry, like, having radio shows or a podcast or just kind of like this production side of things. Also, my study that I'm doing right now, leisure and events management. Um, I basically joined the studies with the intention to organize concerts and festivals. And well, concerts and festivals obviously were my like a part of my life before I got interested in K-pop. But I think after I joined, and like I started studying a lot of K-pop groups and being more interested in the whole industry, I also got more interested in the production side of the entertainment industry, as in organizing concerts and festivals, but also the production of shows and radio shows and interviews and stuff like that. So it just brings a lot of different perspectives and a lot of new insights, I think, in this kind of setup. So yeah, it's a lot of things that can help you with that it can lead you also in life somehow. I was also kind of dreaming of being a manager of um, of some kind of artist. Not I'm not saying that a K-pop artist, but like just in general, because I love music, but I'm not I'm not a good person to be on the side of producing the music. Like I can't sing, I can't rap, I can't perform. Basically, I would say. So I'm not a good example of like being on this side of the music industry, but that what brings me to the other side, to like the production side of it. So that's also kind of like it led me into this point where I am right now, and I cannot even imagine like my life, how different would it look if I didn't search K-pop on this YouTube bar like well, how 6 years ago now. And I feel like there's just a lot of people that can relate to this, that did brought them so much more insights in so many different aspects in life. So yeah, I really think it's really great that that's how it turned out for me and for just a lot of people, I guess. I have drifted away from what I was saying again. I feel like I'm getting carried away a lot with when I'm talking about this. But when you're in the flow, you're just like, But what I also wanted to mention, what is kind of like different and very interesting for the K-pop industry, is storylines. So for a lot of K-pop groups, there is basically like a plot, as in a movie, when a group basically takes this role, and it's this different character, and usually it's just kind of led through music videos that are connected, and the storyline just keeps evolving with music videos, which is very interesting. And I don't think, of course, for some music videos, there are just like deeper meaning, or like it just kind of portrays the meaning of the song well. But here in this case, in K-pop industry, I feel like it's just on another level, as in it's not always kind of connected maybe to the music, or not that it's not connected to the music, but it's just so much deeper. So like the visual representation is just on another level, as I said, having those storylines. So the best examples that I can think of are TXT again, and ATEEZ, which is also a group that had their debut in 2018. I'm also like a very big fan of them. And I am not that invested in the storylines and in all this stuff, but there are people who are like writing those theories, or like trying to explain the storyline as best as they can, and it's just so much fun and so interesting because basically with every comeback, if the comeback is part of the storyline, basically there's just so many people, usually on Twitter, but like just on different social medias, of course, that are writing this whole essay, about what does it mean, like how is this connected to this story, like what happened and stuff like that. So, for like as I said, for example, 80s, since their debut, they have a song. Their debut song is Pirate King, and basically the whole storyline starts from it, so from the very beginning. um, and they have this two dimensions kind of, where in one dimension they're just like their usual, yeah, they're just themselves, and in the other one there's a halatis, which is connected to one of their songs, Hala Hala. And those are the black pirates that are just those bad guys, and like they're trying to fight each other and stuff. And but they have this hourglass, and whenever they turn the hourglass they can like travel in time and stuff. It's just so complex. It's such a complex storyline that it's very difficult to even keep up. But if you would try to Google it, like with 80 storyline or like any other group that has stuff like this, there are like websites dedicated to explain the whole storyline, how it connects and how it continues and stuff like that. Or just like on Twitter, like there are just a lot of people try to explain it or try to. Oh, and of course it's not directly said. I don't think it's ever like, for example, a group trying to explain it. It's usually very much up to your own interpretation, but there are a lot of fans that try to kind of have this narrative and put it in like that it makes kind of sense. So it's just so much fun, but I could never be these people who are like very invested and trying to figure out, like, I don't know, I don't have a brain for that. I'm not in the right mind to actually see like the double meaning of things. Like I'm not this type of person, I think. So it's not for me, and also that's why I guess I'm not as invested in those storylines, that I'm not that much. Like whenever I see a new comeback with a new music video and I know that it is kind of connected to the storyline, I'm always like very impressed, and it's like very nice to see. But as I said, I would just try to Google it or just try to look for someone else to explain it to me, rather than me taking time and invest my time and trying to actually figure out like how is it connected and why and like whatever. So yeah. And also another example, I guess, EXO. Well, EXO, I think they lost their storyline and their concept kind of on the way, but the basic idea since their debut was that they have this planet, they have exoplanet, and they're basically people. Well, I don't know if you can call it people or like whatever, that they come from this planet and they have these different powers. And it was so funny because they had their debut in 2012, so that's also, you can see from the music video that is like very well. Of course you can see that it was made 10 years ago. Like the special effects were not as good, of course. So it's also funny kind of to look at it now. But yeah, they had like each member had like this his own power and stuff, and that was the concept. I cannot really tell you how the storyline like was evolving or like whatever, but that's kind of like the beginning, like of this, having this storyline and this concept for a specific group. But as I said, I feel like they kind of dropped it on the way, because then later on the music videos and like just the music that they were making was kind of fading away from the whole concept. So along the way it got lost kind of. Then they tried to kind of get it back a little bit, I would say, but it didn't really turn out good. So yeah. um So yeah, it's just like some of the groups have this kind of concept with a storyline, and they're like very much invested in it. As I said, 80s and TXT are like the best examples I can think of, and some had a storyline with which was dropped as EXO, or some don't have it, and they just casually they have their own style, and they have this, yeah, they have just their own style and like kind of music that they make, but it's not as deep with the visual representation with music videos and stuff like that. But that's also fine. And but yeah, I just thought that it's interesting to say that it is also a part of the of some groups how well thought through that is, and that is just some another level things, that wow. And after all this talking, I only have one more thing to mention, which didn't really turn out in the conversation in my dialogue before, was that K-pop groups also are kind of divided by generations. So we have, as I mentioned before, there's a kind of like a gender separation, kind of in the groups, of course. Um, but I wanted to say also about the generations that as we have, as is like like very obvious that we have, millennials and Gen Z, for example, there are like generations within the industry. It's just kind of like this division because you can just see kind of the difference between generations is just the same as in, of course, there are just like specific characteristics for each generation. That's also how it is within the industry. So the first generation started from like the very beginning, from the 90s till the beginning of 2000s. I don't think there would be like a specific years. It's kind of like very, it's kind of blurred. It's also with generations, like if you are born, just like at the end of a specific generation and the beginning on the other, and you kind of have both of those characteristics, or like you just choose kind of which one you identify more based on just how you feel. It's kind of the same. Like I wouldn't say there are specific time frames as in year by year because it can be blurred, but there is this kind of division. Let's say that the first generation was from the very beginning, from the 90s till the beginning of 2000s. Then the second generation was from around the beginning of 2000s, like 2003 to 2012. Then from 2012, we have the third generation, which I think now is the most controversial when it was actually the end. From what I saw and from what I can personally also say, I would say that it was basically done by 2017. So from 2018, there was the fourth generation, which is still now, till today. So the first group that I would say is fourth generation is The Boys, which they had their debut at the late 2017. So they would be the first one to debut as fourth generation group, because I would not consider them third generation. No, 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 at all. And I also had this conversation with my friend, like with Mariam, some time ago, because as I was in like getting into K-pop in 2016, and I started studying like a lot of group. Oh, I didn't really explain what standing means. Is this like a common thing that everyone knows how it is, or is it just like very K-pop related thing? Okay, I Google it, and it is in a normal like urban dictionary. I don't know if it was a, a very common phrase for like being a fan of someone, or but yeah, okay, but we know, I guess, what it means. So before I started being into K-pop, I was studying like a lot of groups that had their debuts like before, of course. Like when I started 2016, I was very much into groups that were like debuting in 2012, 13, 14, 15. But I also started studying NCT, which had their debut in the same time while I was getting into the industry, in the culture, pop culture, yes. So I was very much in my head that everyone that had their debut like after I was in, like I was after I got in the into K-pop, was fourth generation. So for some reason in my head, NCT was fourth generation, and then Mariam was like, "What are you talking about? How the hell NCT can be fourth generation? Like they had their debut in 2016. There's no way." But in my head, the division is just so like I can't even tell you exactly like what is the characteristic, for example, of third generation that I just don't like. I just didn't associate NCT with this with third generation, but for some reason I would say that they're just because they're still like very popular right now, and they're like very, I don't know, they have this very fresh music. Like they're just so different, and I think it's kind of that's why I was like very confused in my head of like how to kind of identify them as in generations. But after I was talking with Mariam, I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. Like, there's no way they're fourth generation. But I also wouldn't classify them as third generation because I feel like, for example, when I look at BTS or EXO and their third generation, and then I think of NCT, I would not associate them as in the same category for some reason. I cannot really explain it. I don't know. So I would say they're like three and a half. And I was always making fun of those, like, why would you make this halves? Like, is it third generation or is it fourth generation? Just like make up your mind, you know? But as I said, I think it's just blurred. The line is blurred and you can't really tell because how do you even identify it? It's just basically based on your feeling. So it's very objective. Subjective? Wait, I always mix those two like words. But I meant subjective. Yes, this is very subjective because it's like kind of based on your feeling. Like, of course, it's not that you will say, oh, based on my feeling, like BTS are first generation. Of course not. Of course, it's not how it works. But as I said, it's kind of like we know how generations work just in general, as with millennials or Gen Z. So it's the same. It's just the same. So yeah, I will probably also kind of classify like maybe bands in the future as in, or I would say like this type of phrases. So just a little explanation about that. And there was also one more thing that I wanted to mention. And these are the positions that there are like different positions in the group. So it's of course like a group, the whole group is just a collection of individuals and every one of them is better than other in a different aspect, I would say. So of course they're like vocalists, more some of them are like rappers and some of them are like main dancers. So they're like those different positions in a group, which usually is a leader of the group, a main singer, main vocalist, main dancer, and a visual. So a visual, that's I would say an interesting addition because a visual is basically a person who is picked that seems like take like they grab they grab attention from others because of how they look. And that would usually be a person who just fits the most in the Korean beauty standards. I don't really know also how is this determined because I don't know if it's like selected by someone from the company like before by the CEO or like someone else, but they have this website K-pop profiles which basically have the whole industry in there. Like if you type any group or any person from the K-pop industry, it will be there and it's gonna be a whole profile like what's their name, the dates of birth and the place of birth, just like any kind of information that are like facts about this person that is just well known, you know, that they mentioned somewhere in the interview or something. Um, and those also on these profiles, you will also see position in the group, and yeah, they always have this like division. They have like the main dancers or like the lead. Also, there's a difference in main dancer and the lead dancer. I will not tell you what's the difference because I have no idea, but there is a difference, I guess, since there are like two different types. But I don't think people pay that much attention to this. Like, of course, if there is a leader of the group, it's usually the oldest from the group, but it's also not a rule because sometimes it's a selection. I think it also changes with time because I think with the older groups they would always choose the oldest person in the group to be the leader because that also connects a lot with how like with the culture of South Korea because the hierarchy in like depending on the age is also a big thing there. You use different language to people who are older than you, so it's also kind of common when you meet someone for the first time to ask about your age so you know how to address the other person, like who is younger and who is older and who or are the same age, so you can speak casually like this. So that's why it also I think connects with this how the leader is selected in a K-pop group. It's usually the eldest person, but as I said, right now I think as I see more and more groups, especially from the fourth generation, it's very like up to the leadership skills and also to the group itself of how do they feel about these people and who do they trust the most to make their leader and who do they think would make the best out of this role. So I think like this concept of being the eldest person and giving this person the title of being a leader is slowly fading out and it's not as common anymore. It's more based on their skills and the type of person they are. So yeah, so that's the leader, and then as I mentioned, you have like vocalists and dancers. All of them basically are vocalists, dancers, and rappers. But as I said, it's more like who is the most good at these things. So there will be just different roles that idols have in groups. Um, but for me personally, I don't really pay attention to it because it is, of course, like when you start like being invested in a group and you just know a lot of information about them, it's natural that you know who has the most skills in which kind of field and in which position. But I don't associate people based on their official, let's say, position in a group. And of course, like also I feel like it's just kind of like people like to drag those idols down with like based on this information as well, kind of like using this information of the positions. For example, if there is a fight on Twitter and there's a certain fandom, for example, that wants to drag down other group of just other K-pop idols, they often use the information about the positions to drag them down in the sense that, for example, this one group has like a worse performance, like awards day, they didn't perform as well, like whatever, and then people come up and they're like, oh, they're supposed to be the main vocalist or like whatever, and they didn't hit this high note or like whatever, like it's a stupid example. Like I can't really tell you the exact example of like a specific person with a specific moment, but just so you know more or less like how it is that people just like to use this information against others, also with visuals. Like I don't know, for me it's kind of stupid to have this visual position because it's like a specific like, oh, okay, so but as I said, it's a common knowledge that it's not you're not picking up the best looking member. It's just kind of someone who is fitting the most in the Korean beauty standard. So it's kind of like, so it is kind of the prettiest in their point of view, but it's based on those standards. So you know so yeah, I don't really like this in this sense, that I don't like to pick someone to be a visual of the group. But it is meant to be like, you're the face of the group because you are someone who grabs the attention the most. It's kind of like in the Western media also, you have like in bands, you usually have this one person that would be like the center kind of, of the group, because they take the most attention from people. It's kind of similar, I would say, but I think in the K-pop industry, within the fandoms, within the K-pop stance, it's very blurred, and like people don't really take it that much into account from what I see, because you usually pick someone from the group who just grabs your attention the most based on the feeling that you have, like that you know how they behave, like what kind of person they present themselves to be, and then you just decide, oh yeah, like this is my type of person, and I really like this person. And yeah, that's also what we call bias, right? You're biasing someone from a group. That's like you're picking your favorite person from the group. So yeah, it's like based on your own taste and like whatever. So I think it's very like blurred from people. It's just kind of stated, those positions are stated officially kind of, but I don't think it affects in any way the group, as in people just don't pay attention to it that much. Because obviously, if, for example, Wooyoung from ADs is like a performer, like a dancer of the group, and then he has this solo performance of being an artist of the month from this one Studio Chum. It's like a YouTube channel, and they have this really professional studio where the groups have their comeback. They usually are invited to the studio to film the performance of the main song, the title song, with those cool cameras and lighting and like all the stuff. And they also carry this artist of the month kind of series, let's say, that they pick a person from the K-pop industry to be their artist of the month, and then they have their solo performance to like any other song. That they just create choreography for a specific song and then they perform. And Wooyoung was one of those artists of the month like last year in June 2021. And yeah, well, since he is the performer and the dancer, like it's just, like it's kind of obvious that he can have this chance. I don't know if that makes any sense for you, but that's how I would describe it in this sense. So yeah, I think those are like the most essential things that I wanted to mention in this episode. Maybe there will be like a guide part 2 or something, where when I think about like something else that is essential for people who to know before maybe like diving deeper into this or something, then I would just record another episode. But I think those are like the most essential things that I came up with till now to mention. And it's also kind of like mentioning it kind of briefly, just explaining it on the surface, but it's not getting deeper into it because it may just be confusing. I don't know. But yeah, I'll stay in touch with all of you on Instagram at This Is K-Pop Hub. Because yeah, I would just also like to know what kind of content would you like to hear, and if there's anything that you would like me to explain more deeper. So yeah, I think I will just stay in touch and yeah, you'll hear me in the next one. Thank you.